I walk through the shadow of death left to fear. This is a journey through the halls of hell.
Yes people, what's good? I'm BA, back again with a movie review, and this week I want to talk about the classic Dumb and Dumber. Now, I love comedy. I've written stand-up comedy, you know, a battle rap for many years, which is basically like roast comedy mixed with freestyle rap, and also I've even done a stand-up comedy roast battle. So I understand comedy. I do sometimes write comedy, and for me, I find it very hard to find a comedy film that isn't just, I guess, kind of forgettable. There's very few classics in that field to me, especially over the last 20 or so years. So keep in mind, when I say there's not been that many classics, I'm talking about from mid-90s onwards. I can think of maybe two. And one of them is Dumb and Dumber. The other, for me personally, is Team America. I just think it's genius. I know to some other people there's many elements of it that are just way too silly, especially nowadays, but I still think it's just amazing. But Dumb and Dumber is the other one, and I feel like I can explain what makes something like this stand out to me still over, you know, A Hangover, or some of these other comedies which became popular over the last 20 years, which I just don't think are classics. Now, my reasoning for Dumb and Dumber is because, yes, it is a silly comedy with that layer of jokes throughout it. You know, stupid college humour jokes and silliness jokes. So you've got the Monty Python style of humour with the silliness, and you have the American Pie, you know, frat boy humour layered over that. And generally, most comedies will stick with those two layers nowadays. There's nothing else to it. What makes Dumb and Dumber truly genius is there's a third layer of a truly potently, wittily, well-written script. Me and my friends quote this film endlessly. There are so many standout, brilliant one-liner jokes that on top of the silly gags, the visual gags, the college humour gags, it just feels like a relentless barrage of actual jokes that hit their mark rather than miss more than hit. From the very opening scene, when Jim Carrey says to the woman, "That's a lovely accent you have, and where are you from?" And she goes, "Austria." And he says, "Oh, well, in that case, good day, mate." All those pieces of dialogue are just hilarious throughout it. Another one of my favourite parts is when they accidentally take a wrong turn on their trip to Aspen, so they're meant to have the Rocky Mountains around them, and Jim Carrey wakes up in the car. He looks around to the flat plains and he says, "So this is the Rockies, huh? That John Denver's full of shit, man." I don't want to turn this review into me quoting this film non-stop, but genuinely I can quote this film until the end of time. So many parts of this film I find genuinely hilarious. If anything, it's the other stuff in this film that hasn't aged as well for me. You know, the things at the time we found hilarious, you know, like the moment when Jeff Daniels' character is on the toilet and he's been given laxatives. You know, that scene to me is just your typical college humour of the era, which nowadays isn't that funny. And later on, when he gets his tongue stuck on the pole on the ski lift, these were moments that back in the day were iconic, like classic hilarious moments. But to me, when I rewatch Dumb and Dumber, those are the moments that don't make me laugh. It's all the silly micro mannerisms they choose, all the dumb shit they're doing in the background of scenes, all the things that they clearly improvised that weren't even in the script. That's what makes this film brilliant. Now, the second half of this review is going to be somewhat of a rant. Let me explain this to you. A few years ago, I decided to throw out all my DVDs and get a Blu-ray collection. I'm aware now they have 4K and they'll probably have some amazing K after that, but I thought to myself, I'm happy with Blu-ray quality. If I replace my collection with Blu-rays now, I will be happy with this collection, and even if other formats are released and people can upgrade, I'll be happy I've got them in this format. So I started a long process of slowly replacing my DVD collection with a Blu-ray collection, and when you go through that process, you find interesting anomalies, and one of the biggest ones for me is Dumb and Dumber. So check this out. There was a time period around the mid-2000s where every horror and comedy, when released on DVD or Blu-ray, had to have a red and white stamp on the front of the box saying unrated version or something like that. And it was just their excuse to act like you were going to get some grittier, raw version when you bought the home version, but in actuality, all they did was add in a few minutes of footage that they probably cut for good reason upon the theatrical releases. No film suffered more than this than Dumb and Dumber, because the theatrical version of Dumb and Dumber, the VHS version of Dumb and Dumber, the DVD version of Dumb and Dumber is a comedy classic, but for some reason, when they decided to release this on Blu-ray, they wanted to make a red stamp on the front of the box, unrated edition. And what they did was add a lot of footage, which is just not funny, does not add anything to the film, and it extends it by, I forget exactly how many minutes they've added in, but trust me, none of the additional jokes work. They're all silly gay jokes and dumb additional takes that weren't as funny as the takes they used in the final cut. Just anything they could to have an excuse to put that red stamp unrated version on the front of it. And what they actually did was create an inferior movie, which I no longer regard as a classic, and that is the only version of Dumb and Dumber you can get on Blu-ray. How fucked is that? Now, because I'm OCD, I can't just have one DVD sticking out in my collection, so what I did was I took an empty Blu-ray box, bought the Dumb and Dumber DVD, cut the fucking DVD art card to the shape of a Blu-ray and stuck it in the Blu-ray box. So in my collection is the theatrical release of Dumb and Dumber, but unfortunately I'll only ever be able to enjoy it in 720p, as to this day they only have their inferior extended unrated edition as the 1080p Blu-ray variant. And I don't mind these fucking blood-sucking companies trying to drag a few extra pounds out of our pockets. It's what they do. These psychopaths sit round big, long, fancy oval tables all day, chairs all facing inwards, with the sole intent in discussing how to further strip us of our finances. I get it. That being said, when you're actually taking a classic and adding so much additional shit footage, it makes it an inferior, more forgettable, and not classic anymore version of the movie. You have fucked up, my friend. And what's even worse is, I have watched reactors reacting to Dumb and Dumber, and most of the reactors who are reacting to Dumb and Dumber are being forced to watch this extended Blu-ray version, so they're not actually intaking for the first time the genuine cinematic theatrical version of the film. And it'll be the same for anybody purchasing it nowadays. If they go online, see a list of the best comedies, see Dumb and Dumber, they'll go on Amazon and make an order for the Blu-ray, not knowing they are not actually getting the original version of the film, but a really crap version with a bunch of unnecessary footage added to it. And while I'm on this rant actually, I see a lot of other reactors also reacting to Terminator 2, and that also had a director's cut which was released, and again that is inferior to the cinematic version of the film. It ends with Sarah Connor in really bad old lady prosthetics on a bench talking, and it is definitely nowhere near as good as just seeing the road and Sarah Connor doing a monologue over the top of that. It's just another one of these movies they wanted to try and re-release with a new lick of paint and act like they were going to give people something awesome they'd never seen before, but all they can ever add to these films is things that they didn't think were good enough to begin with. If they thought they were good enough to begin with, they'd have been in the fucking film to begin with. Anyway, that's my extended rant over, but it's more of a warning to you guys, you know. If you've never seen Dumb and Dumber and you are going to check it out, make sure you are watching the DVD or before version, because if you are watching the Blu-ray or after version, you will be watching a not classic, inferior version of what is one of the best comedies of all time. And as always, I hope you guys have enjoyed this review. I've been BA. Like, comment, subscribe, come over to the Patreon, join and help support me personally, and until next time, peace.